Hello and welcome to Money Trail with me, Amir Arafat. Today, the Wall Street casino, where hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of our past, present, and future is at stake. Wall Street has, especially over the past decades, turned into a gigantic financial casino. The big Wall Street banks are making tens of billions of dollars a year in the derivatives market, and nobody in the financial community wants the party to end.
What started out as simple insurance products has morphed into a bizarre set of gambling instruments.
Well, out goes a real productive economy. Everything from agriculture to industry to technology. Remember GM, Ford, Daimler, Chrysler, the bankruptcies just a few years back. And remember catchphrases like, what's good for GM is good for America. Well, that's out the window. And what's in is basically financial products, innovative Wall Street casino products, anything from mortgage-backed securities to credit default swaps to options, tens of different financial products. No one can make heads or tails of them. The scariest of all, the boondoggle, the derivatives market, whose size boggles the mind. We're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars to anywhere near $4 to $8 quadrillion. But how big is a quadrillion dollars? How many zeros? We're talking 15 zeros here. Boggles the mind, right? Especially when you compare this with the GDP of the entire globe, anywhere between $70 to $75 trillion. So we're talking 4 to 8,000 million dollars. The word derivative sounds complicated and technical, but understanding the concept is not really that hard. A derivative is essentially a fancy way of saying that a bet has been made. Originally, these bets were designed to hedge risk, but today, the derivatives market has mushroomed into a mountain of speculation unlike anything the world has ever seen before.
First of all, let's just explain what derivatives are in general. If you have a bond, that is a debt obligation of a company. If you have a share of stock, that is a piece of ownership of a company. If you have a deed to some real estate, that means you own it. So that you can call the first level of securities or financial paper that are directly related to some property in the tangible, physical, real world. But when we get into derivatives, we're talking about other kinds of securities, other kinds of financial paper, which are based on those. So they derive their value from the underlying financial paper. And these have grown enormously in the last 30 years in particular. I regard them as the most dangerous, most toxic, most explosive form of financial speculation.
Estimates of the notional value of the worldwide derivatives markets go from $600 trillion all the way up to $4 quadrillion. It's important to note that a gross domestic product of the entire world is only somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 to $75 trillion. But it's inevitable that at some point this entire mess is going to come crashing down. And when it does, the world will face a derivatives crisis that could really destroy the entire global financial system.
When you talk about the size of the derivatives market, the lowest estimate I've heard is $600 trillion. The higher estimates I've heard are somewhere between $3.5 and $4 quadrillion. Please remember that a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion. So you're looking on the upper end at $4,000 trillion. The global gross domestic product right now is around $75 trillion. There aren't enough goods, there aren't enough commodities, there isn't enough ore in the ground, there aren't enough trees, there aren't enough anything to cover this type of bet.
The amount of money at stake is absolutely staggering. Graham Summers of the Phoenix Capital Research estimates that a notional value of the global derivatives market. In an article for Seeking Alpha, it tried to put that number into perspective. If you add up the value of every stock on the planet, the entire market capitalization would be about $36 trillion. If you do the same process for bonds, you get a market capitalization of roughly $72 trillion. The notional value of the derivative market is roughly $1.4 quadrillion. Let's see how huge $1.4 quadrillion really is. $1.4 quadrillion is roughly 40 times the world's stock market, 10 times the value of every stock and every bond on the planet, 23 times world GDP. It is hard to fathom how much money a quadrillion is. If you started counting right now at $1 per second, it would take millions of years to count to $1 quadrillion.
What we're talking about here are two main kinds. There are the exchange-traded derivatives. Here in the United States, they go across the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or the Chicago Board Options Exchange. In London, you have the London ICE Exchange, you have the London LIFI and its descendants. So here we're talking about futures, options, and indices, and also all the combinations of those. Those are exchange traded. It's estimated that the value of those, so-called the price of those at any given time, is about 700 trillion, 800 trillion, 900 trillion US dollars. But then there's a whole other dimension, which are the so-called over-the-counter derivatives, the swaps sometimes called. These are private contracts between companies, individuals, counterparties. They take place in private offices, and they're thought to be another 700 to 800 trillion in existence at any given time. And nobody knows really how much there are of those, because in most countries of the world, they're not reportable. We have the Dodd-Frank Act here in the United States, which is supposed to begin making them reportable and known, but they're very pessimistic that that's going to happen. So I would say in today's world, we've probably got between 1.5 quadrillion, and that is to say 1,500 billion US dollars in total derivatives, but they're always being bought and sold. So when we talk about turnover, the sales every year, we're probably in the neighborhood of 6 quadrillion, 7 quadrillion, 8 quadrillion. And again, the uncertainty is because nobody knows. There's no legal compulsion for a lot of these derivatives to be brought to the attention of governments.
Derivatives are financial instruments used to hedge risks or for speculation. They are derived from stocks, bonds, loans, currencies, and commodities, or linked to specific events, such as changes in the weather or interest rates. The key word there is speculation. Today, the folks down on Wall Street are speculating on just about anything that one can imagine. A derivative has no underlying value of its own. A derivative is essentially a side bet. Usually these side bets are highly leveraged. At this point, making side bets has totally gotten out of control in the financial world. Side bets are being made in just about anything one can possibly